What's up, Call of Duty fans? Welcome back to the CDL recap of IHOLDSHIFT with you. We had an insane first day of the Chicago home series going on with the Call of Duty League, and we're here to get you guys caught up on what went on in day one and get you set up for day two as far as what potential predictions could come out. And I'm going to do this a little bit backwards. I'm going to start with Group B first. It was, again, a very hot day of games pretty much all the way through. But Group B we'll start with because Group A was pretty spicy. So we'll start things off talking about Seattle going up against LAG. This was actually our second match that we saw coming through, and the biggest question mark that we had for Seattle was, could they win a Search and Destroy? Well, to start things off, we'd go to Ramaza first, and Apathy, who had a very disappointing performance from the Dallas home series, would come out huge, as him and Karma would kind of keep the tide rolling, quite literally, for the Seattle Surge, never fully allowing LAG to get the full secure. It would come down to a last-second hill, but Seattle, again, outslaying for the rotation, would take a very tight one, 250 to 248. And now, Search and Destroy, the true test. Is Seattle going to be competitive at all throughout any point this year? Will they win Search and Destroy? And if they can they close out a series? And going to an Arklov Peak, again, a very dictated map based on what kind of tempo you can put into the mix. And Seattle's playing very cautiously, playing safe, making sure everything was done diligently. And it kept them off of balance a couple of times versus LAG. But the good news was the safe look was the correct one, as it gets Seattle to one of their first Search and Destroy wins in a while. 6-3. The score, Seattle go up 2-0. And now the kind of shoes on the other foot here, because for LAG, with all these roster changes, maybe if they drop a set versus Seattle, it would be maybe time to reconsider. And the problem was they'd go to a domination where in Gunrunner, Seattle was 4-0. LAG, as we talked about many times, even in the power rankings, one of their worst game modes, and by far their worst game mode, is the domination. They struggled here. Easy wins for Seattle, 172-132. And Seattle move in through their first match into the winners qualifier as they take a 3-0 series. Going to Dallas next as they'd play up against Optic Gaming LA. Again, after we had seen Optic Gaming LA at Los Angeles and then not seeing them at Dallas, we weren't sure how good this team was going to be from 1 week a couple of months ago to now. It started off pretty okay, though, for OGLA, as they would get a Gunrunner hardpoint. By far their best chance at taking a hardpoint off of Dallas, is it not only is one of their best maps on that mode, but they also beat Dallas here previous when they last played. Unfortunately, Shotzi would come up, show off, and pop off on the online scene. That became too much of a lead for Optic Gaming to really ever fully come back. Granted, it should have been more like a 250-120. Optic Gaming stayed in the fight, but it was just too much of a hurdle for them to overcome. 250-175, Dallas. Then we go to Arklov Peak Search. Dallas has either been really good here or really bad here. And flat out, Optic Gaming LA took them to camp, took them to church, did some surgery on them, whatever. They were clinical all the way through this one, as Dallas would go down 0-4 early, lacking a lot in first bloods. Kenny would finish off the map 12-4, as Optic Gaming would even up the series 6-1. Then we go to a Hackney Yard domination. Dallas, big first half again from Shotzi and Clay, but Optic Gaming LA did not give up at any point in time. It would come down right near the end where Dallas was just a touch cleaner. They had a little bit more room to work with, and with that, they would take the 155-150, going to stay on Hackney Yard, but to a map for hardpoint. This map would come straight down to the simple fact that Dallas controlled P1, P2. Optic Gaming did better on 3 and 5, but pacing-wise, if that happens, that pace usually always favors the team that starts off P1, P2. It would be the case here, as Dallas would clean things up 250-208 and take the 3-1 in the series. Now let's go over to Group A. We started the day technically here with Atlanta versus London. It'd start off in Azir Cave. Simp would drop 49 kills, but would it be enough? We would get a third rotation of hills through the first hardpoint, through the second, into a third. Again, it's not very common that happens. 22 total seconds left on the clock. Atlanta FaZe put on a masterclass of how to zone off that third hill, and they secure it 250-234 in a tight one. Shawnee, again, in the roster for London, not nasty still. I thought for sure London was going to get smoked out of this series because of that, but Shawnee's showing that he can absolutely come to play. We go to Arklov Peaks. Atlanta down early, battle back, comes to a round 11 as it would then narrow into a 1v1 between Major Maniac and Scraps. And you could just tell, based on the way that Major Maniac was moving around, the confidence was in his corner. Scraps was being much more pensive about how he was playing around the B site. 1v1 happens in the front yard. Maniac takes it 6-5. Atlanta in another tight one. And then we go to map 3, Hackney Yard domination. London would start on the unfavored side from the C flags here on Hackney Yard. They would get the early spawn, flip to A, but they would also get flipped in the second. It was tight pretty much all the way through until the very end, where Atlanta would take things 166-149. But a scary one for the Atlanta FaZe boys, even though they take it in 3-0 fashion. Then we'd finish off the day with our final match of the evening, Chicago versus New York, a marquee matchup in which couple of role question marks coming into play for Chicago. Not looking great on Search and Destroy when they were playing at Dallas. Had a couple of question marks surrounding them. And our first true look at New York, with Mac in the roster being more well-rehearsed than Happy was the last time we saw them. Gunrunner is where we'd start. An Envoy who had MVP-like performances in Dallas was nowhere to be found. He was at 9-25 at one point in time. Mac would look solid, keeping it even KD, but more importantly, because he was keeping himself even and playing the hard point, Attach, Accuracy, and Zuma were allowed to go do whatever the hell they wanted to, and with that extra space, they found a lot more kills, and with that, a 250-135, New York strikes first. St. Petro, S&D, Envoy, making it very clear that Main Street is my street, but New York would still start off at a 4-1 opening. And you thought, okay, Chicago, can you find the same magic you had versus Paris here? Comeback was in the cards. Envoy would help push things to a round 11. Would it be 4 rounds in a row? The answer? No. Could not happen. Round 11 turns up in New York's favor, 6-5, as New York is up 2-0. We'd go to a gunrunner domination, and this was a tight game all the way through. Chicago definitely continued to be pushed around a bit, but they were starting to fight a little bit more toe-in-toe with what New York wanted to do. They regained it near the end, made sure they played the map at a better rotational pace than New York had to, where they had to essentially force a comeback. It was a draw in the first half. It would come down to a 6-point win for Chicago, 156-150. Now to Hackney Yard. A good map for New York, as they have played here pretty well. New York would start up big, 220-160-ish, as again, New York started on the P2 side and would hold both relatively correctly all the way through. Chicago, though, would crack open the office P4 hardpoint and break through for P5, as Arcades would go on 10 kills straight. And with that, he would come after his second life, find another 5 or 6, and again, down 220-160-ish or so. Chicago find a way to work this one out, 250-228, map number 5. Is there going to be a Chicago reverse sweep? It would be Ramaza, not one of Chicago's best. They looked a little bit all over the place. New York able to find a 1v3 off of Temp. Temp in the end, also popping off, had a brilliant map on the search. And it would be a 6-3 for New York in surprising fashion. And, well, again, Chicago's Search and Destroy has not been stellar lately. And now with this loss, you wonder what might happen here. So let's take a look at what we have for the rest of the day coming forward. Starting here in Group A, since that was where we are. London playing up against Chicago. Honestly speaking, based on the performance that I saw from London today, this is not one that you look at the two teams matched up against each other and you say, oh, Chicago wins because they're the better team. I cannot honestly say that that's going to be the case. London played really well throughout the day today, and a lot of the maps that, again, seem to favor the side of London are also relatively favored for Chicago. You take a look at the hard point. Chicago, a Nazir Cave team. London, Azir Cave team. Search and Destroy, Gunrunner, both the best for both of those teams. And then Domination's a little bit more questionable for London than it is for Chicago, but still, this is the potential of going 5 and potentially being an upset to where Chicago could lose out twice. I wouldn't put it past them. Beyond that, though, Atlanta playing up against New York. Do you think New York can play up against Atlanta based on what we saw from Chicago and their upset today? My answer is I don't necessarily think so. Even though Atlanta was tested versus London today, the fact that they still had the resiliency to come out on top and still find a 3-0 says a lot about this Atlanta team. Major Maniac looked good. Celium looked good. The whole team looked good. They just flat out, they all play super well together. I've got Atlanta in that one, most likely a 3-1 or 3-0, which would then pit the winner of Chicago-London up against likely New York. And honestly speaking, I think New York could beat either of those teams. I could see a world where New York gets out of the qualifiers and gets into the playoff bracket. So keep that on your radar as you're going out in the world and making your predictions. Over to Group B, though, to finish things off, Seattle and Dallas first. Seattle looked good versus LAG, but LAG is looking pretty bad. Empire, yeah, your search and destroy looked a little bit sloppy, but everywhere else they looked calm and collected. I've got Dallas in this one pretty easily. Shotzi's looking like an absolute monster. Him, Illy, and Hugh are playing very, very well, and even Crimsix had a really good day today, so I've got Dallas in that one without much cause for concern. But on the bottom side, Optic Gaming, LAG, rematch from LA. Who you got? Got Optic in this one. LAG just don't look like they're ready to go. Some of their hardpoint moments look all right, but their domination's looking like it's in shambles. We saw a pretty solid domination from Optic here against Dallas today. Plus, they held their weight in both of the hardpoints and looked very good in Surge. I've got Optic in that one, 3-0, 3-1. So then you would get essentially Seattle versus Optic. And this is going to be an interesting one because, again, I think Optic looks better in Search. We know Seattle sucks at Search, but Seattle looked pretty solid in their respawn today, and I expect them to look pretty good again versus Dallas as well. I think that you're going to see this one likely go 5. Personally speaking, I think Seattle gets out of this pool based on how they look today. If they can continue to just win one search and destroy, still do very well in domination, it gives them an edge in just about every series versus teams that are ranked around them currently in the standings. So that's kind of where I got Seattle. But of course, we'll recap day number 2 when everything comes to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed the game. Let me know, am I completely twisted on some of these takes? Who were your top performers and who are your underwhelming performers throughout the day today? Let me know in the comment section below, and tune in next time for everything Checkmate Gaming on Call of Duty League right here on Checkmate Gaming's YouTube. And of course, until next time, hope you guys all keep holding it down. So long.